What if Poland joined the Axis powers? We all know what happened in 1939. Hitler went a step too far in his conquests and chose to invade Poland. That was when Britain and France declared war as well on Germany. And then a series of dominoes fell into place that resulted in tens of millions of people dead and the destruction of vast swaths of the world. But what if in an alternate timeline, Poland never resisted the invasion of Germans and instead joined in arms against, or with them actually in this case? How different would history be in the first place? But this might not be as far off as you might think in the first place. First of all, in 1934, a non-aggression pact was signed between the Polish and the Germans by the Polish leader Pilsudski or whatever. Now this guy is kind of interesting. He wanted to break up the Soviet Union into the member countries that it was made of. That plan was called Communist. However, we must also mention that the man signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union 2 years before that. Basically, Pilsudski wanted to maintain Polish independence. If signing treaties was good enough to do that with powerful nations, and then that's what he would do. Now, Hitler had great interest in signing an alliance with the Polish and fighting against the Soviet Union, but Pilsudski would have none of it. Before he died in 1935, he told other Polish government officials to remain neutral and build up the army in case of a fight with either the Germans or the Soviets. And that, folks, is why the Polish never signed an alliance with the Germans, and then were basically run over and invaded by the Soviets and the Germans. Of course, that wasn't the sole reason, but if Pilsudski had accepted Hitler's advances and made a treaty with the Germans, history would have gone a very different route. I can say that confidently. First of all, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact between the Soviets and the Germans never would have been signed if the Poles joined with the Germans. The pact was basically intent on invading and dividing up Poland between the Germans and the Soviets. And since the Germans are an ally of Poland, what would be the use of that? Actually, the Germans really only wanted access to the Polish port of Danzig and a use of an extraterritorial railroad, so that would likely be satisfied with the alliance in this timeline. So, in this alternate timeline, there are four Axis powers by 1939: Germany, Poland, Japan, and Italy. Then Hitler would make his move. You see, the main objective of Hitler in the Second World War was not invading or defeating the Western powers. It was mainly one based on racial ideologies and fantasies. Hitler wanted to essentially build one giant Aryan empire from the Urals to the German heartland. Of course, this included the killing of millions of people, including the Poles, but Hitler would likely conceal these plans from the outside world until he actually achieved victory. So, in 1939, or somewhere around that time, Hitler's army, along with Polish troops, launched a giant invasion of the Soviet Union. I don't see the Japanese invading the Soviets just yet, and there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, they were split between expanding into Siberia and expanding into the Pacific, and for most Japanese leaders, expanding into the Pacific region was more important. However, they also basically got their bottoms kicked at the Battle of Khalkhin Gulf. In 1939, the Japanese engaged the Soviets under Zhukov, and well, things did not go well for the former group. So a ceasefire was signed between the two groups, and hostilities ceased for the time. So, I think the Japanese would lose this battle anyway in the alternate timeline and would have to pull out of the Soviet Union. However, if the Germans had gotten to Moscow, which they nearly did in our timeline but didn't capture, I think the Japanese would engage the Russians. Okay, so here we are. In 1939, the Germans and Polish were marching into the heart of Russia. Since the invasion is not launched in winter, if Hitler launched it in September of that year, which is the same time he invaded Poland in our timeline, and the Axis forces would be better off. Also, Hitler would have an ally with him, although a relatively weak one at that, instead of invading all by himself against Soviet giants. If Hitler were to ally with the Poles, he would have to swallow his racial hatred for non-Aryans for a bit until the invasion of Russia was over. The more Russians flocked to join the Axis invaders. This would have happened in our timeline if Hitler hadn't just murdered a bunch of them. He had that pesky little Hitler. So in this timeline, the combined forces would most likely reach Moscow, If that were to happen, it is likely that the Japanese would attack as well. Of course, the Japanese wouldn't be too much of a help on land, but the Soviets would be fighting on two fronts now, and they would take a heavy blow. With their army be divided up, the capital city falling to the German and the Pole, Stalin moves to the Urals, along with a bunch of other Soviet factories. The Japanese, preoccupied with fighting in the cold, vast expanse of Siberia, never attacked Pearl Harbor, seeing it as a suicidal thing to fight two great superpowers at the same time. Finally, the Soviets are brought to their knees as their weakened and divided army is pushed deeper into the Urals. The Spanish would also likely join by now, because basically they wanted to join the winning side. See my What If Spain heard the Axis Powers video to check that out. A link in the description below. Axis powers wouldn't have to take all of the Russian land before the Soviets surrender, since if they control most of the population and cities, they have basically won. Stalin commands basically no support at all in the final days, and he commits suicide as the Axis powers close in, and the war is over in a few years. The Soviet Union is essentially wiped off of the face of the earth, and the Axis powers begin to divide up the country among themselves. Britain and France never join in, since Poland is never invaded, and they are fiercely committed to staying out of the war. America never joined the war either, since Pearl Harbor is never attacked. If the Axis powers were to take the Soviet Union, a terrifying era would follow. First of all, Hitler would likely turn on his ally, the Poles, and begin slaughtering all non-Aryans in concentration camps. The weaker Polish army would be no match for the Nazis, and they crumble as the land is depopulated and the so-called German Aryans move in. Poland had millions of Jews, and they were otherwise slaughtered in our timeline anyway, so that was what would happen in our timeline. Hitler expands the German Empire to the Ural Mountains, and the mountains act as a buffer zone between the Japanese-occupied Siberia, fueled by the vast new amounts of resources that they find in Siberia. The Japanese push further into China and the Pacific. They occupy the northern parts of Australia and the many more Pacific islands, feeding the East Asia prosperity sphere. The Germans solidify their rule over Eastern Europe and purge millions of Jews, Roma, and other so-called undesirables. Eventually, these groups are extinct in this region. Hitler wouldn't want to fight France and Britain, and he considered them as racially superior as the Germans. His main goal was to bring Lebensraum to the Germans and to defeat Jewish Bolshevism. After achieving those goals, he would likely not try to take over the rest of the world. It would be unrealistic to try to take over the entire world, and anyway, not of much use to him. Japan